Torturing their victims and watching them deteriorate over time might provide serial killers with a sixth sense of satisfaction. These individuals include those driven solely by lust, thrill, or gain, as well as those who seek authority at the expense of others. However, no matter how much they enjoy this sick habit, they always get behind the bars and sometimes get death sentences. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be looking at 6 serial killers reacting to death sentences. Yeah, you heard it right. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos is regarded as the first female serial killer in American criminal history. She murdered 6 people and engaged in robbery. She was employed as a sex worker in the state of Florida when she began her killing spree. Her grandfather mistreated her mentally, physically, and emotionally during her upbringing, and at age 15, she began working as a prostitute. In Florida, where she worked as a prostitute, she was frequently abused and humiliated by males. During her trial, some men even beat her viciously. Wuornos was remorseless and angry. After being convicted and handed 6 death sentences, she began yelling at the jury, calling them scumbags and threatening to kill again. Wuornos, who had spent a decade on death row, had no desire to prolong her execution. Joseph James DeAngelo. The renowned Golden State murderer escaped law enforcement for more than 4 decades, but police have finally apprehended him, contrary to what some may have anticipated. Prior to April 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo appeared to be an ordinary former police officer living near Sacramento. Former co-workers characterized the 74-year-old as an average Joe. Despite his stoic attitude and lack of a smile, he is claimed to have been a careful homeowner with the attention to detail befitting of an ex-cop. However, he abruptly disappeared in 2018. In California, he was charged with terrible crimes. In almost 40 years, the killer perpetrated over 50 rapes and 12 murders in California throughout the 1970s and 80s. Up until now, nobody has been convicted of any of these horrible crimes. Joseph DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 26 crimes related to the raping and murder spree on June 29, 2020. As victims and family members presented their testament, DeAngelo, who had been seated in a wheelchair and covered by white face masks, rose from the wheelchair and spoke without the face covering. Ronnie O'Neal. In 2018, a jury found Ronnie O'Neal III guilty of the savage murders of his 9-year-old daughter and the mother of his 2 children, following a trial that took 3 years to prepare. At age 11, his son barely escaped the attack and testified against his father. Prosecutors opened their closing arguments the same way they began their opening statements, with a 33-year-old defendant, Kenyatta Barron's 911 call. The prosecutor stated that by the time O'Neal's girlfriend pled for her life, she had already been shot. As the recording progressed, O'Neal can be heard pounding her with a shotgun. O'Neal elected to represent himself, similar to his opening statements 1 week prior. He yelled at the jury that his son's answers were inconsistent and that he believes his son was lightly coached by the Hillsborough County officer who adopted him afterward. Scott Nelson. Scott Nelson was given a life sentence for the first-degree murder of Jennifer Fulford, a nanny. He testified at trial that he had really murdered her. During the sentencing phase, he entered the stand once more and pleaded with the jury to put him to death. Nelson underwent abuse as a child, spent 25 years in jail, and had head injuries. His defense attempted to prove that the death penalty was not the appropriate response to the situation. On September 27, 2017, Nelson broke into the home of Fulford's employer, kidnapped and murdered her so there wouldn't be any witnesses. Several outbursts were made during the penalty phase by the defendant, who stated that he desired money in order to evade probation. First, he grumbled about his brother's evidence, and then he protested when a federal prison expert indicated that Nelson had problems with Muslim inmates. He also argued with his defense, claiming that they had not asked key questions. Ted Bundy. As one of the most notorious serial murderer cases in American history, Ted Bundy's saga in the 1970s may have altered how society perceived serial killers and the horrors of sexual assault and murder. Bundy admitted to committing 30 homicides in 7 states. Bundy appeared to prefer college-age women. He also attempted to kidnap Carol DeRange, but she managed to escape. Her kidnap survival and subsequent trial resulted in Bundy's first conviction. If you're familiar with Bundy's case, you've definitely heard about the tan Volkswagen Bug, which he used frequently and which police were looking for. He was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in Utah State Prison, but in January 1977, he was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of Karen Campbell. Bundy intended to represent himself, therefore he was granted access to the law library and the Pitkin County District Courthouse, where his trial was scheduled to take place. He fled by leaping from a second-story library window. A few days later, Bundy was apprehended driving a stolen Cadillac in Aspen. In 1979, Bundy was convicted guilty of 2 accounts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder following 2 highly publicized trials in Florida. Despite the fact that Bundy confessed to 30 killings and was convicted of 3, some analysts believe the actual number could be in the hundreds. Michael Madison. During a sentencing hearing for an East Cleveland serial murderer, Michael Madison Van Terry addressed the man who tortured and murdered his 18-year-old daughter, Sherelle DeTerry. Madison taunted and smiled at the victim's family members. Madison murdered Terry's daughter as well as Shatisha Shealy and Angela Deskins. He has openly admitted to admiring serial killer Anthony Sowell. In July 2013, the remains were discovered wrapped in garbage bags and in close proximity to Madison's Cleveland residence. Van Terry approached the platform and struggled to conceal his emotions. Terry then hesitated and turned to gaze at Madison, who was seated behind the defense table. Terry instantly dashes across the courtroom to assault the inmate when he catches Madison laughing at him. As Madison and others rushed to avoid Terry, the courtroom briefly descended into mayhem as disputes battled Terry. Terry was hauled from the courtroom by law enforcement officers. Madison did not appear to be hurt. A judge in Ohio imposed a death penalty on Madison. So that's all from today's video. If you enjoyed it, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell icon so you never miss our upcoming videos. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you in the next video.